Next week, we start our new season and our new series. We're going to be looking at prayer, and again, particularly prayer in the workplace, focusing in on the Lord's Prayer line by line over the next few weeks. But for today, it's Proverbs 31, and verses 10 to 31. It's a big chunk, so I'm not going to read it all out now. You can read it when you go from here, but I'll refer to various little things. And I always think that actually the title is a little bit unfortunate. You see, it says, the wife of noble character, which is great. A wife of noble character who can find? She's worth far more than rubies. Brilliant. Wonderful to find a great wife. I'm still looking. But actually, I don't think that is the focus of this passage. And some of you who are familiar with Hebrew might know that there isn't actually a different word for wife and woman. They're the same word. And before anybody tells me it's sexist, it's the same with husband and man. And so this is not about marriage per se, but it's about what a woman of noble character looks like. And there is a sense in which the writers of Proverbs, who are generally fathers giving advice to sons, are saying, if you're going to get married, marry a good woman. But beyond that, Proverbs 31 is primarily about what that good woman looks like. So if you're a woman here today, read this in your spare time and try and tick off all the different bits. This is what you should look like. And one of the things that really strikes me is that this woman who is praised to the skies is primarily praised because of her working practices, because of her business life, and all of that area of things. And so this seems a brilliant conclusion to our series on Proverbs, but also very, very relevant for a church in the heart of the workplaces of the city. And I want to ask a big question. What's business all about? What do we discover, maybe particularly about the morality of business in Proverbs 31? And I want to take a big step back and look at it at bird's eye view rather than the sort of nitty-gritty of what we do day by day. Does what you do, if you're involved in commerce, business, finance, which I know many of you are, does it matter? Is it good or is it bad? And I want to start by scotching two very well-known sort of perspectives on the workplace. They're not always articulated, but I think we would recognize both of them. The first is the idea that business is immoral. You get a lot of people out there who, when they say the words big business, there's real venom in their voice. And you can tell that what they're wanting is for all big businesses to go bankrupt. And they hate the very thought of it. They see business as somehow grubby. Any kind of commercial activity, profit making, that whole area, no. That's compromised, it's bad, we don't like it. And then on the other side of the fence, you have the people who, perhaps more from within the world of business, would say, well, actually, business is amoral. Markets are blind. They're not good, they're not bad, they just are. And we do business, it's not about morality, it's about, well, business. And I want to suggest that those are both very prevalent and those are both completely undermined by what we find in Proverbs chapter 31. First up, business is immoral. Well, if it is, nobody bothered to tell the writers of this chapter. Because one of the things that this lady of noble character is praised for is her business activities. We read, for instance, in verse 18, she sees that her trading is profitable. Brownie points. I suspect most of you, if your boss said that about you, that would be positive feedback. Good stuff. Trading is profitable. And we see elsewhere, we talk about her dealings with merchants, the earnings that she has, and the security that brings. So this idea that business is immoral is utter rubbish. And I think that sometimes needs to be said because so many people I know who work in different commercial or business areas are quite tentative about it. A little bit nervous about whether they've sold out. I remember one friend of mine who I met up with after a while, I hadn't seen him since university. I said, what are you up to? And he said, I'm afraid I've sold my soul because I'm working in the city. No, well, he might have sold his soul, but it's not because he was working in the city. And you need to hear that the kinds of things that your daily life is about, profit, trading, commerce, business, the desire to be successful in your chosen field, these are not wrong. In fact, they get a big thumbs up from Proverbs 31. They can be a wonderful thing. My message to you, go get them, do it, be successful. But be careful about the way that you do it. Because in the same way I want to scotch the idea that business is immoral, I want to scotch the idea that business is amoral. There is a profoundly moral dimension to what you do. What you do has an impact on people, and what you do matters. And again, that comes out in Proverbs 31. Why is this woman praised for her business practices? It never just stops with, and her trading is profitable. The old idea that it's just about the bottom line, numbers on a page, profit good, everything else irrelevant, that just does not wash it in the book of Proverbs. Her business practices are good and are praised because of the impact, the fruit that flows out of them. And we see it in various places. First of all, it has an impact on her. She's able to support herself. She sees that her trading is profitable, verse 18, and her lamp does not go out at night. She is supported. There's nothing wrong with supporting ourselves. But then it goes wider. It has an impact on her family. We see in verse 15, she provides food for her family. We see how her children arise and call her blessed in verse 28. Her husband also, and he praises her. There's this sense that she's able to provide for those that she's responsible for, and that is a good thing. But then those that she's responsible for sort of goes a little bit further. If you look again at verse 15, she provides food for her family and portions for her female servants, or her maidservants, that's sometimes described as. I think a modern equivalent would probably be employees. These are basically the people who work for her. So again, she has a responsibility not just to herself and her family, but also those she works with, those who work for her, and in various ways in which we see her integrity coming out in this passage. We see that she's also not ripping off or ruining other people. And so she has a wider kind of respect within society for the impact of her trading and business on those around her. And then it goes even further. We read in verse 20, she opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. Because she is successful in business, she is enabled to be generous. And that enables her to have a positive impact on those less fortunate than her, those struggling in society. And I think we can see weaving its way through the whole of this chapter is a recognition that her business profitability is a good thing because it has a positive impact on society. And that's something which I think often around here we sometimes lose sight of. I believe in most of the jobs that you guys are involved in because I think that they matter. I think that we need good lawyers, for instance. We need to have a justice system that holds up under strain and which enables us to live our daily lives in peace. We need good bankers. Successful bankers in a purely commercial sense, because the financial system is a key part of all our lives. If it doesn't work, the whole economy goes up the snout, as happened just a few years ago, and there is huge pain and suffering for the whole of our society. We can go on and do the same kind of process on probably all of the jobs that you are involved in. These things matter because they make an impact on society. And that should be in your minds when you are at work. What you do impacts other people, and you should be concerned by how it impacts other people and that it impacts them for the good rather than for the bad. And many of you may be aware that you can play business both ways in Scripture. Proverbs 31 says, brilliant, we like it because it has a positive impact. But there's other parts of the Bible, such as maybe the book of Amos, in which business is roundly castigated and damned because of bad business practices. Amos, for instance, talks about selling the poor for a pair of sandals, sort of destroying people by doing business in an unethical way. So this sort of idea that business is good is not unqualified. It's good if it's done in the right way. And so I often say to people, when I talk to them about kind of what I do, working in a church in the city, that we desperately need good business people. And I say we need them in both senses of the word. We need you to be good at your jobs because otherwise things can go belly up, like happened in the financial crisis. A lot of the decisions that were made weren't moral decisions, they were just bad business decisions. But we also need you to be good in a more moral and ethical sense. It matters how you work. And for some of you, it'll matter big time because you have big responsibilities. For others, it will matter on a smaller scale. All that God is interested in is whether we are faithful to what he has given to us. You will be called to account, I will be called to account for what we have done, not for what everyone else has done. But we are all called to be good as far as we can in both those ways. And it's interesting then that is part of what this woman is praised for. There's a lot of moral stuff in here as well. She speaks with wisdom, verse 26. Faithful instruction is on her tongue later on. She's a woman of noble character right at the start. And I think most clearly of all, verse 30, she is a woman who fears the Lord and for whom God and the ways of God are at the heart of what she does. So what does it look like to work as God intended in your business? The details will be different from person to person, but two things I think are a constant. You need to do well at your job. You need to be good at it. And you need to be good morally about the way you go about it. Amen.